the home run derby as Joey Gallo had an early exit, as Shohei Ohtani put up a valiant effort. You have to wonder, what would Yordan Alvarez have done if he was in the home run derby? We'll talk about this and more on tonight's Locked On Astros podcast.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Heisman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chansey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Heisman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talks Stros. Find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can I find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter and at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
All right, so I know we're all probably have the home run derby hangover now. We're all kind of rooting for Shohei Ohtani. I know a lot of people probably put a lot of money on Shohei Ohtani or Joey Gallo, and they both had an early exit in the first round. But it was still a good matchup, and I know Pete Alonso won it, and this is second year in a row that he won it. But there's a lot of good things that we actually didn't talk about in yesterday's show because we had Mike Stanton on, and there's so much that we focused on, and we're going to talk about that in today's show. We're also going to talk about the draft. The Astros got to actually draft some players, and guess what? The Astros punishment is officially over now that they actually are not going to lose any more draft picks from this point on because of the whole cheating scandal. So from now on, there's no more punishment, just the boos. And by the way, Orbit got booed. What the heck? Orbit's getting booed. What the heck? We'll talk about that. And if you want to know about all the players the Astros draft, why don't you go listen to the Locked On MLB Prospects podcast hosted by our friend Aaron Layton. He has all the knowledge you need about all the prospects, and maybe we'll get him on pretty soon to tell him about the guy the Astros got. We'll talk about him in a second. Tyler, but I kind of spoil the name. We'll talk about him in a second, but this guy was a steal for where the Astros got him. And so there's so much for us to talk about on this podcast, and I'm so excited about this. And I know Brett wanted to watch the entire home run derby, so I'm glad we were able to do that. And unfortunately, Shohei Ohtani just looked like he got winded, and it just looked like too much. He's not used to that.
No, he's not used to that, but also his pitcher wasn't that great. I mean, Joey Gallo kind of got screwed too. His guy totally sabotaged Joey Gallo. I think more important than the hitter is the pitcher, because I mean, you've got to deliver taters, and whoever's throwing, whoever the Mets guy is, and I'm sure he's some baseball guy that everybody's like, oh, I can't believe you don't know who he is. But Pete Alonso is actually my favorite non-Houston Astros player. And this guy has swag. This guy has he's a tank. And Mr. Corona says here that all lefties got screwed. Yeah, left-handed hitters, Trevor Story even said it in the warm-ups. Right-handers have the advantage in this park. But there are some things that I wish they would go back to, Eric. I wish they would go back to the 10 outs instead of this shotgun balls flying out of the park, because you can't, you watch one. The whole point of the home run derby is to admire the home runs. ESPN didn't have a running total of the home run distances. There were just a lot of things that I thought that they left missing, especially missing was someone like Yordan Alvarez, like you talked about. How awesome would it be to have Yordan Alvarez in there? He is a lefty, but I think, guess what? Guess where the All-Star game is next year, Eric?
It's going to be at Dodger Stadium. So
That's
it's
right.
Really interesting to see if the Astros actually go. So there's the theory that the Astros were scared to go to face the opposing hitter, the players over there. But just imagine going to Dodger Stadium next year. So we'll see what the real deal is next year. But I don't think that was the situation. I really think that a lot of people think that this was the Astros versus Major League Baseball for not having Yuli Gurriel go because he deserved to go. So I don't really want to go into conspiracy theory, but it's just kind of weird that all the Astros just said, yo, we're sending this one out. But I think the Astros just have a better goal in mind. But speaking of Yordan Alvarez, I know that a lot of the other players had a lot better stats than Yordan Alvarez, but I think he was made for the home run derby. And I think that it's a shame that he didn't get to go. But if he was going to go, to the home run derby, would he have won this? I know that Joey Gallo did not look good. I know there's a conspiracy theory that the fix was in on Joey Gallo, that I think they give Mancini or somebody an extra ball, like they counted his even though the timer went off or something, but they didn't count Gallo's or something. But I'm not going to worry about all that. But I think that Alvarez would have done so much better than Joey Gallo did. And Joey Gallo has more home runs than he does this year. But if you look at what Alvarez can do, he can hit the fastball. It's the breaking pitches that he struggles with. So I think that Alvarez will be perfect in a home run derby. So I hope that next year, if Astros are allowed to go to Dodger Stadium, I hope that they allow him to be in a home run derby, because that would be awesome.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see them sit out another All-Star game. I think this is a one-year thing, and most of them have legitimate reasons. Aaron Judge, Chris Bassett even dismissed players not showing up, saying going a full 162 after a 60-game season is kind of a shock to your system. And so the players aren't even really concerned about it.
Yeah.
But I think the Astros themselves were like, okay, we've got two options. We've got some injuries we need to really rest, or we've got some family situations that are very important that we need to tend to. And I mean, imagine if Altuve had said, okay, I'm going to go, but then, he left, and I haven't heard any updates on his father. I'm assuming no news is good news, but he probably would have not gone anyways had he not turned it down. And so the thing is, the players turned down around $300,000 each to go to the All-Star game. That's a huge chunk of change. That's no small cookie. And for them to turn that down is pretty significant. So I think you have to have legitimate reasons. MLB has to have official work.
Get it. I'm not sure, but they may still get it. I don't quote me on that, but I think they still get it for being named to the. I don't know.
There you go.
Don't quote me on that, guys. So okay. I just wanted, before we move on from Alvarez, I know that he's technically played 164, so a little bit more than a full season. He's had 44 home runs, 138 RBIs. So that's what you could expect from him in a full major league season. I know we're through the halfway mark. He only has 16 home runs this year, but he's already got 56 RBIs. So the home runs would be a little bit lower than his on pace for that. But I know he got off to a slow start, coming back from not really playing a lot last year at all.
And Jose Altuve is on pace for 54 home runs.
Yeah. So, yeah. But the way that Alvarez has been swinging a lot better recently, I'm not too worried about that. But so it's just good to kind of think that maybe in the future we can see Alvarez in the home run derby, and it'll be good to it'd be awesome to see Jose Altuve in the home run derby at Dodger Stadium.
The smallest guy out there. And I mean, that would be a phenomenal thing to see. I don't know that Altuve would ever do that.
No,
but like I said, I don't like the pace of the All-Star of the home run derby. I understand why they do it, because they want it to be quicker. Yeah. But it's just like the players are absolutely exhausted unless you're a guy like Pete Alonso, who's a high motor guy. You're just like, good. Like, how do they keep doing this? I mean, the Ohtani and Soto showdown, when they were just going back and forth, I was like, Ohtani was completely gassed. Right. Soto was like, I'm only 18 years old, and so I can go.
I thought he's 22. Is he still 22, or is that a couple of years ago?
I'm just joking.
It's kind of like
he's always the youngest player to do whatever. So it's like, I'm so tired of hearing about that.
It's kind of like you have to have the right parts, and Ohtani just didn't have the right parts for the game, and he used them all during batting practice. So speaking of having the right parts, let's talk about Rock Auto.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Rock Auto has been around for 20 years. They're a family-owned business. Here's the thing. When you go to a auto parts store, they charge you different prices at different tiers because they charge mechanics different than they charge regular Joes like you and me. So what you need to do is you need to go to rockauto.com and you need to search whatever make, whatever model you have, and realize that you can save 30, 50, sometimes 100% on your auto parts needs, whether it's carpet, whether it's a fuel pump, whether it's brake pads, whatever it is, the sky's the limit at rockauto.com. They have everything you need. Go explore. I mean, their website's easy to use. I've used it. I know friends that have used it. They deliver it right to your door. Rockauto.com right now have all the parts available that you need. Right in the Locked On box. And how did you hear about us? And write Locked On to let them know that we sent you. Rockauto.com makes shopping for car parts easy. Reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com.
Thoughts by Dusty.
You can only get that feeling at the ballpark. That's what keeps me coming back. That was one of the greatest comebacks I've seen since I was on the Dodgers. We got some bad dudes here. And I got a few more. Boy, we needed that game badly. Let them celebrate. Let them party. Jose Altuve beat them in New York and beat them today. It was awesome that very few fans left the game. And there's one more, I think. The fact that we had 14 walks and still won the game, I think that's almost impossible. Thank you, Dusty. That was Thoughts by Dusty.
That was, we should be like Captain Obvious by Dusty Baker. Yeah, I mean, the way they won that game, I don't know if you've seen the viral live reaction where John Boy and I guess his dudes, Jake and all them are watching the game. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't even realize Jose Altuve was the next person up to bat. What, like, are we going to walk him, please? And they're watching this unfold. And when he hits it, they are just so pissed. They're like, how do you keep pitching to this guy? And I've seen this one guy he's got a YouTube channel kind of like we do. And he was completely raging on the New York Yankees. He was like, what do you mean? Like, okay, Chapman can't pitch, but Green can't pitch either. And he just kept going on and on about, I mean, they're just frustrated. You know, their bullpen was exposed in that game.
I didn't even see that Sanchez did I didn't see that he did the jersey thing too. And that's why they gave him the jacket. It makes so much more sense. And then after the game, Martin Maldonado said, oh yeah, the reason why I did the jersey thing was because it was hot in there. And then after the game, that's why they said they took Jose Altuve's jersey off because it was too hot. And so,
but people were like, Jose ripped his jersey off. No, he didn't. His teammates ripped his jersey off. Right. Let's get it right.
And Martin Maldonado said after the game, something that was funny was I was watching a fight last night, and the guy that won the fight said, karma is not a bee, it's a mirror. So he was kind of referring to what Aaron Judge did. So karma, and it's a female dog. So I just don't want to say it on there.
Thank you for clearing up what the bee was.
Like you just kind of looking at me like.
No, I thought you meant honeybee.
Oh, okay. No.
I'm glad you cleared it up.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then also from Elias Sports, the last Astros win in which they trailed by 5+ in ninth inning was on 7/25/1980. The Houston won 9-8. The Astros trailed 7-2 to start the ninth inning. So that type of comeback does not come very often. And the Yankees did not even trust pitching Aroldis Chapman against the Houston Astros. So that shows how little confidence they have in Chapman right now. So that's kind of scary. And I know that the way they've played us, we shouldn't want them to face them in the playoffs. But I think MLB would love an Astros versus Yankees matchup in playoffs.
Okay. Newsflash.
For the drama right. Only.
I'm just saying the Yankees aren't making the playoffs.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying.
There, yeah,
I'm
no,
just
yeah,
saying
for the
for the
drama.
drama.
But I would love to play the Red Sox in the first round, and I would love the Rays and the Oakland Athletics to play in the first round. I'd love them to beat up on each other before we play them. Actually, they would then play the White Sox, I think, and then we would play the winner of that because I was looking at the matchups because we're tied for second in the AL. So that would be, dude, the MLB playoffs are going to be phenomenal. But before we get to that, phenomenal. That's right.
All right. Hey,
tip your cap to Rome.
yeah, but we're going to talk about the draft in a little bit. But I do want to talk a little bit about Sunday's game a little bit. After the game, Ralph Garza Jr. got his first win. And after all that excitement, all the jersey pulling, all the excitement, can you imagine getting called in office? So Ralph, good job. You walked 3 batters. You got 3 strikeouts. You got your first major league win. By the way, you're going to Sugarland. Good job. So he was optioned after the game. So there's been no corresponding move. So
great win. Go back to Sugarland, kid.
Yeah, there are 2 options for coming up. Austin Pruitt has been basically with the Sugarland Skeeters for about 30 days. So his time is up. So he basically has to come up, or basically they have to do what they did with Francis Marquez, or also Josh James is ready as well. So I think we're probably going to see Austin Pruitt. I know that on Sports Talk 790 the other day, James Click said that they're probably going to see Austin Pruitt right after the All-Star break. So I would guess that we're going to see Austin Pruitt for the first time, I believe, as a Houston Astro. So
yeah, exactly. And, actually one of the guys from Apollo was at the Sugarland game today, Colin, and he was talking about Josh James. And the reason why I mentioned this is he said he noticed that Josh James was noticeably different in his delivery. He was throwing about 94 to 96. So maybe we can't call him Big Flames James anymore. He said it looks like he's changed a lot about the way he throws. So that could be a good thing. James was one of these like 51st round picks. I mean, the way we got some of these guys, the Astros pick, we paid very little in the draft for guys like him, Toro, and we have a very good history of drafting players really, really well and developing them. So who knows? Maybe James will make a believer out of me,
Yeah, and I think he shortened his arm so he doesn't put so much strain on his arm. So, so we're going to see a different Josh James because all those years of just his kind of delivery has kind of put a lot of strain on his arm. So, yeah, I think we'll see a different person. And the Astros are hoping that they'll get a different Josh James, but they can't really I think that they're going to go in trade deadline looking for somebody else. And Colin Barber, he's a kind of up and coming Astros prospect. He's going to miss the entire rest of the season with the injury. So unfortunate news there. Carlos Correa is feeling better. Does that mean he'll be back as soon as the All-Star break is over? I don't know. But also Josh James made another appearance at, like you said, and so the Astros are getting some more reinforcements back. Pedro Baez did throw another bullpen. So we'll see what happens down the road, but I still think they're going to make a splash at the trade deadline. So speaking of making a splash before the trade deadline, let's talk a little bit about betting on making a trade.
Yeah, so betonline.ag is the place to get all your sports betting action, all the news, all the highlights, all the information you need. If you're not an avid bettor like me and you want to get in on some sports betting action, go to BetOnline. They have all the latest scores. They keep you up on MLB, NFL, NHL, whatever the sport is, they have you covered. Probably even the Summer Olympics coming up, I would assume. Just whatever you are into, they have. Reality TV shows. So go check them out. BetOnline is doing a special for our listeners. They will give you a 50% welcome bonus when you sign up. A 50% welcome bonus. So if you put in $100, they'll give you 50% on top of what you give, and you can start out with that kind of money. You can bet on who's going to win the National League or the American League in the All-Star game, or you can bet who will come out on top in the AL West, or what Astro will lead in home runs, so on and so forth. So go to betonline.ag. Use a promo code Locked On. They are your online sportsbook experts.
All right. So speaking of Josh James, he pitched tonight 2 innings. He allowed 1 hit, 0 runs, 0 walks, 1 strikeout, 31 pitches, 19 strikes. So does that mean he's coming up? I don't know. Austin Pruitt kind of has to come up because his 30 days is up. So I think we're going to see Austin Pruitt come up. So we'll see. And let's go ahead and kind of switch gears to the draft. And so let's go ahead and talk about who the Astros took with the 87th overall pick. This is a guy that I think was ranked like 37th by MLB Pipeline. And this was a guy that is a high school player. And the Astros did what I thought they were going to do, especially with drafting basically I think it was 3rd round. So what they did was they drafted a high school, 2 high school students, then drafted a whole bunch of college students, because the college students, especially the senior ones, you can sign them for a lot cheaper and then use that money to allocate to maybe give a little bit over a slot for some of the high school students, because the high school students could be a little bit harder to sign. So for the 87th overall pick, it was Tyler. What's his last name?
It was Tyler Whitaker. He's out of Bishop Gorman High School in Nevada. He was Nevada's #1 ranked player in high school, and he is the 37th ranked prospect by MLB Scout. So he's in the top 150. Here's the thing. I got kind of the inside scoop from Aaron Layton and another guy that I follow that follows the draft pretty well, is he shot up the board late because of his power. Like you said, he went from shortstop to the outfield. He kind of reminded the Astros of Tony Kemp, from what I'm hearing, infield, outfield type option. Right. And so this is a kid that I think has a lot of promise, and definitely, with him coming out of high school, he will have a few years to develop. But I mean, he's 6'4" and he's 190. So they expect him with a huge upside to be a run producer. If the Astros develop him properly, according to Aaron Layton, he could be a real force at the major league level.
I know that the scouting director, Chris Gross, kind of said that we were a little surprised he was still available. To have him fall to 3rd round, we were ecstatic. And that's why I said, I mean, if this guy was so talented, why did he fall? Was there signability issues? I know he already committed somewhere, but this is a guy that if the Astros are able to sign him, this will be a big time deal. I know it's going to be way down the road, but this is somebody that you'll have to wait for, like Kyle Tucker. But once he comes up, he could have that type of impact. So I think that was a good signing for the Astros. So with the next pick, it was the 117th overall, round 4. It was Alex Ulloa. He's a shortstop from the Calvary Christian Academy in Florida. And he was the 165th overall prospect by MLB.
No, yeah, definitely. And, again, another solid pick. The Astros are going position heavy right now, but he possesses an excellent bat speed, above average run times. They think he may be able to move off of shortstop and maybe end up at second base, but his bat can play at either position. 5'11", 180. He's around Alex Bregman's height, if you know what I mean. And so this kid, and again, another prospect with a high upside, offensive minded. So the Astros are going heavy on the bats, and where I thought they would be focused on pitching, they actually went with the offensive side, it seems like, in this year's draft.
Tyler Whitaker said that I know that about being picked by Houston Astros. I know they win. That's what I'm all about. I'm super excited. What I don't understand is why there's some trolls after they're announced that they're selected by Houston Astros. There are people saying cheaters. Like,
yeah, I actually spoke with his dad, Tyler's dad, and not on the phone, but through private message. And he said, my son's a fierce competitor. We're incredibly humbled and glad to be a part of the Astros family. So I would be surprised if he didn't sign with the Astros.
All right, with the round 4C pick, I believe this is what the pick they got for George Springer. The 132nd overall, they got Chase McDermott. He is a right-handed pitcher from Ball State. So he had 125 strikeouts and 82 and 2/3 innings pitched. He normally throws in the mid 90s and touches 98. So he has a curveball. And so he was ranked 127th overall by MLB. So
yeah. So get this, Burke Grander, and I went looking for this information. I did not know this off top hand, but he basically is a power arm with a high spin rate. He listed his spin rate on his breaker at 2,750 RPMs, and he basically has a high effort delivery. His fastball is 93 to 96, tops out at 97. His curveball 73 to 76, the slider 79 to 82, and his changeup 89 miles per hour. So this is a big kid out of Ball State. He seems to have a solid frame, and definitely seems to be a really good pickup for them. At 132, he was ranked 127. So for him to still be there and to post these kind of numbers, high ceiling for this kid for sure.
Yeah, in round 5, I believe this guy already has a verbal agreement with Houston Astros. Is Quincy Hamilton, outfielder with Wright State. He's 23, so basically, I think he was a senior sign. So he slashed 374, 535, 771 with 15 home runs and 20 stolen bases in 2021. And he's a left-handed outfielder. So he's 5'10" and weighs 190. So this is another. Normally these senior outfield signings you can kind of sign for the minimum because they have no other options.
Well, I heard he was a steal. At this, like I said, the guys that I was talking to today about the draft, they were like, this kid, they got him. It was surprising that he was actually there. And I mean, you can't take away from college experience. Like,
right.
If I was a father, and which I am, but if my son was going to be drafted, I would actually tell him to go play college ball, get that experience, especially if you're a pitcher, go develop. This kid is a senior, coming out of Wright State. And, I mean, he's
Fifth
already
round is no joke. There's a certain allotted value for that. So he's going to make some money. It's not going to be cheap.
Right. Well, it's not going to be cheap, but the Astros also aren't paying a ton of money for these kids because they're outside of the first 2 rounds. So it worked out really good for them, I think.
They could probably sign him for below slot value is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And round 6 is a local prospect, Spencer Arigetti. I guess that's how you say his name. He's a right-handed pitcher from ULL, and he played at Louisiana Lafayette. He attended Seco Ranch High School, and I believe that he went to the World Series parade. So this is a local kid who grew up a big Astros fan, and he struck out 91 and 83 and 2/3 innings pitched last year. And so he said it was a dream come true, kind of coming back. He said, "I'm an absolute competitor. I love to win. I love to get after it. I love to bring energy. I'm going to be in your face. I'm going to be in the zone a lot. I'm going to force you to make contact and force you to get yourself out." And he also said somewhere else, I can't find it, but he grew up in Katy, and he's thrilled to reach an agreement. I went to the parade when they won the World Series, and have been countless games before that. I've been all over Minute Maid Park and pitched there. I love everything about it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what you like to hear. You like to hear, and you like to hopefully see some of these homegrown kids end up becoming Houston Astros. I mean, I remember when Brandon Backey made it, to the Astros, and he had some key playoff outings there. Even though he didn't have a super long storied career, what he did, he maximized his time. We also had J.R. Tolles from my alma mater, Crosby High School, who actually came up and actually played a few games, played a season or two with the Astros. So it's always great to see local kids. I mean, heck, even when they get drafted to their teams, we had a kid from Friendswood High School down the road go to the Tigers. Well, I mean, it's just great to see the talent in the area be rewarded for all their hard work, because that's what they do.
All right. In round 7, it was Joey Loperfido. He's an outfielder from Duke, and so last year he batted 374, 8 home runs, 12 stolen bases. He's a center fielder, and he bats left-handed and throws right-handed. In round 8, it was Colton Gordon. He's a left-handed pitcher from Central Florida, and he's a left. He's 6'4", 225, so country strong there. He has a 2.64 ERA with 96 Ks and 78 1/3 innings. But he had Tommy John surgery, if I remember it correctly, in May. But he was their Friday night guy before that. So Dallas Keuchel was his college Friday night. So that Friday night starter is their best pitcher. So that's
exactly.
In round 9, it was Aaron Brown. He actually threw a bullpen for Astros scouts in Baltimore. And so he was a Middle Tennessee State. He posted a 3.99 ERA, but he had a 15 walk to 113 strikeouts in 85 2/3 innings in 2021. So that's pretty good. He's 6'4" and 220. And in round 10, the last pick of the day was Michael Sandel, outfielder from University of South Alabama. And he batted 313 with 11 home runs and 15 stolen bases. And he's listed at 5'10" and 185 pounds. So a bunch of new prospects in Astros farm system. We may not hear from a lot of these guys from a long time, but that's what you got to do. You got to build these depth just for the future.
No, and that's what in every interaction I've had through the last 3 years, interviewing minor league players, whether it be Colin McKee, who's still in the system, or Josh Rojas, who now is on the major league roster, or Brandon Belak, or, Jake Myers, who's trying to make it up, or Pete Solomon, all these guys. And you've talked to many, many minor leaguers throughout the Astros system, and they all complement the development that the Astros put them through. And I mean, it's not like you would hear anything bad, but you always hear them talk about how they trust the process, how they heard about what they did before they got there, and how they are working through the system. And there's a high value in personnel. There's a high value in attention. And so these kids now, if they come here and they skip high school, not high school, if they skip college, they have to realize they're going to be in the mix with a bunch of other guys trying to make it. And so for those guys that do go on to college and come out like this, like some of these late guys, like some of these seniors, that will bode well for them. And they might actually skyrocket through the system, especially with the pitching needs that the Astros have, which, interesting times are coming with this trade deadline of who we're going to get and who we're going to give up to do that.
Yeah, so that's what the draft was. That's the importance of this draft. I know last year it was only 5 rounds. The Astros lost the first 2 rounds. I know they got 1 pick back because of the Garrett Cole signing, but the Astros lost. The pick went backwards this year because the Astros went over the luxury tax threshold last year. They're probably going to do that again this year. So that's what happens when you go over those compensation picks they get pushed backwards. Instead of being in the second round, in between second and third round, they go back to the 4th round like happened this year. So guys, that's all we got for tonight's Locked On Astros podcast. Thank you as always for everybody from joining, and Isaac Pacheco from Friendswood. Congratulations for going 39 overall. That's a local product. That's
that's the one I was talking about earlier. I just couldn't remember his name.
Okay. Yeah. So congratulations to him. And yes, we'll be doing a podcast tomorrow, Mr. Corona. And yes, we'll be talking about the All-Star game a little bit. And we'll be kind of looking back at what was the Astros first half, what was good, what was bad, and what needs to get better for the second half. And that's kind of our goal for tomorrow. And speaking of goals for tomorrow, today on the Locked On Today podcast, this is Shohei Ohtani's world, and we're just living in his greatness. He's starting and leading off for the All-Stars. get more of the sports news you need in less time with the Locked On Today podcast. Follow the Locked On Today podcast on Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to Locked On Astros podcast and listen to Brett and I talk about the Astros every day. And we'll see you tomorrow.